We'll call to order this meeting of the Montara Water and Sanitary District Board of Directors, March 19th, 2015 at 7:40. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Slater-Carter.
Present.
Director Harvey.
Here.
Director Boyd.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Huber.
Here. All right. I don't really have a president's statement, but if we have a comment.
Yes, I have actually two comments right at the beginning of the meeting. The first one is that the online pay system that we've been working on for quite some time is now live. So if everyone on the board and in the audience would like to log on, just go on to our website. There's a link right on front and an explanation how to set up an account with the online pay system. I think it's actually fairly nice. It allows you to see also your current bill, your billing history. It shows the water usage history, so you can really actually keep better track of your water usage as well, and get a lot of questions answered right directly online. The second comment that I have is in regards to the planned drilling project in the back of Montara. We made an announcement that the drilling would start on Monday, and we released those on Friday past week. That's when we thought we had all our ducks in a row. That was not the case. Apparently there was a timing issue. It happens if you depend on 5 different parties that need to come together. And so in the last minute, the drill rig had to move to a different site. So we expect the rig to be in Montara, on site A, actually tomorrow. Let's hope that this works out. So we have to ask for everybody's patience. We announced we would make a lot of noise this week. It most likely is going to be next week.
And this drilling is for what?
These are exploratory boreholes. They are in the Caltrans right-of-way, and we're essentially trying to see if there is a good water source that we can later develop. At this stage, the exploratory wells will be tested. We'll see how extensive the testing actually, how much testing we have to do. We'll find out during the process. And after we're done, let's say within 1 or 2 months, we should be done with all our tests. That's a conservative estimate. And after that, the boreholes will be backfilled at this time.
Thank you.
All right, that's it from me. Thanks.
All right. Do we have any other public comments for items not on the agenda?
Yeah. I will put it at the front rather than making people wait till the end, but attended 2 meetings this week. One was the Board of Supervisors, where they were talking about the need for affordable housing in Sanitary County, and they are of particular interest to this district is that the county is trying to figure out how to encourage perhaps second units. The state law was passed some years ago that mandated that there be no public hearings if somebody wanted to add a second unit to their house, like an in-law unit or even a freestanding unit in residential areas. And the Board of Supervisors is also looking at finding ways to legalize second units that were put in perhaps illegally. And I think they are working on trying to find a way just to make sure that they are safe. There are some second units that are health and safety hazards, and needless to say, those are some that would have to be brought up to higher health and safety standards. But otherwise, they're just looking to find ways to accommodate the growing working population and senior population on the coast. So it's something that I think this district should stay in touch with planning on. The other interesting thing, and I will just say that Paul and I had worked on this project, talking to the county about it for years, was the need for smaller houses instead of 5,000 and 6,000 square foot houses. And they are finally realizing that smaller houses really are desirable to a whole lot of people, so they're going to be looking to ways to encourage smaller but more living spaces. But that then has a problem for all the communities, and I brought it up then, and that is, what about water supply, guys? Because if you have more people, you're going to have more need for water, and this is a problem that all of California is going to be facing. But the Board of Supervisors hearing on affordable housing will be, if it is not already, on YouTube. And there were 11 recommendations. The Board of Supervisors took a stand on every single one of the 11. One of the things that they decided not to do was to adopt a rent control ordinance for the unincorporated areas. So that was of interest. The hall was jammed. The other hearing that I went to was a LAFCO hearing, and it was mostly the LAFCO budget, but there was also the Bay Area State of the Region Economy, Population, and Housing Report for 2015, and I'll have Clemens put it on our website as a point of interest, but it also talks about jobs, housing vacancies, income, and where people are moving, why they're moving. Just it's a very good overall look at housing and economic needs for the Bay Area for the last couple of years. So again, we'll put it on the MWSD website so people can look at it if they want to. It's fascinating reading. But again, they did not talk about water. I don't know how you can talk about housing and not water. So they're all talking about the need to create housing, but nobody's talking about the need to create water. And we have a decreasing per capita use, but an increasing population. At some point, you can't reduce your use enough to meet the needs of the population. So that's going to be an interesting discussion that's coming up. I'm sure people heard about what the state is talking about, allowing water districts to put in rationing and so on.
On the supervisor's discussion about second units, what's the next step for them?
They have Steve Monowitz looking into it, and he will be reporting back.
Is that only for the coastline or for the whole
No,
county?
they're going to be actually working with all of the cities, but
Okay.
anything that the Board of Supervisors comes out with is for the county as a whole. And if there are any changes made for the coast side, it does have to get reviewed by the Coastal Commission.
Okay.
Also, by the way, if we do have multi-unit dwellings, that is on a different rate, correct?
Yes,
It is.
they're both on the water and sewer side on
Yeah.
different rates.
Just want to note that as that progresses, we're going to need to be involved because I know, among other things, the county's records of second units in our community is incomplete.
Abysmal.
And not quite accurate.
Yes.
And I'll mention too that there are requirements that this agency has for second units, and there may be a lot of things out of step with what the regulations are. So we're going to want to try to chart as calm a course through this so that we don't disrupt anyone who's in a situation. If the county's going to try to true up everything, we've got to make sure not to disrupt the members of our community who are wherever they are with respect to second units and our regulations in the county. So as that progresses, thanks for bringing that up. We're going to want to agenda something and start thinking through how we can keep this.
I've actually contacted this week as a follow-up to this meeting Supervisor Horsley's office and was assured that we're going to be part of the process.
I think we need to be proactive about how to make sure that we speak out so the county's aware of what some of our regulations are and aware of what we know about second units in our community, and try to represent some of the interests of the people in our community who would be affected by whatever the county's going to do. And then start thinking about trying to avoid disruption for the people in our community, especially the ones who are providing a second unit for, say, an elder parent. This is something where we want to make sure the touch on this is very gentle.
Or in the case that I know of, women who are suddenly single either due to divorce, widowhood, or change in life circumstances, that all of a sudden they have to find themselves finding a way to get supplementary income.
Dwight?
No, I think the big issue is that the definition of second unit in and of itself is very dubious. Because if you look at how people, I mean, what's the difference between a second unit is that 2 different floors? Is that 10 or more people? Is that your garage being used? I mean, if you really, the bottom line, if you start opening this up, you'll find that the terminology for it is out of date.
Well,
Probably have to have it.
and our community is rather creative. So
Yeah.
I know I've seen a variety of situations that would almost certainly fall under most definitions of second unit, but I mean, nobody's really going to speak for our community if it's not us. And I think we've got an interest in, because of our regulations and our responsibilities, in trying to make sure we help see people through to a place where, you know, things aren't hidden and people are feeling good about where we wind up.
Exactly. So I will send you the link for this, Clemens, because in color it's actually a very beautiful document, but LAFCO only printed it in black and white.
All right, any other comments on matters not on the agenda? Hearing none, let's move on to old business 1, review and possible action concerning 2015 water rate study.
So this is an old item that was discussed at the last meeting. Actually goes back quite some time, but at the last meeting, at the March 5th meeting, a draft study was presented that suggested a modest 2% rate increase. Alex did a very good job of walking us through a presentation that showed this more in detail. At the meeting, the board referred the study to the rate committee to consider changes in the rate structure that should be. We then subsequently had a committee meeting on March 17, and there at the meeting, this committee directed the staff to present 3 scenarios tonight. With rate increases of 2%, 2.5%, 3%, and the other variable in this is the number of connections, which is for the 2% at 20 new connections, for the 2.5 at 15, and the 3% at 10. I'm going to hand this over in a second here to Alex, and he can walk us through different scenarios. At the end, we will have to send out a Prop 218 notice to notify all the property owners in the district that we plan to raise the rates if the board should decide so tonight. And then we're shooting for a public hearing at the June 4th meeting, which would allow then the implementation of the rates on July 1 as planned. So let's also take a look at the draft notice. We might want to do some slight changes on it, but I think it's actually a pretty good one at this time already. So the recommendation is going to be to adopt the rate study under one of the suggested scenarios and authorize the general manager to send an according Prop 218 notice to all property owners in the district. Alex, do you want to maybe pick up and present the 3 different scenarios and the differences in them? And there's also then the addition of the fire protection charges.
Yeah, I mean, so we came up with a few scenarios based on this. You know, the key differences are whether the rates go up 2%, 2.5%, 3%. Not a big difference in my mind. This is more policy decision. You know, really the goal is that you're at a good place now. There's been some things that have happened that have, you know, they're helping you keep costs down. You don't have to do, I guess, the airport well. Other things have worked out in your favor with water supply, so you're in a good spot where you're at with your rates. But you don't want to fall behind the cost of service. We've seen other agencies be in a good place, then all of a sudden they go 1 year, and they keep putting it off year after year, and before long they've gone 6 years without a rate increase, and you know they fall behind. They need to catch up with double digits, and now they're facing something new. So it is a good idea, and I think there was general consensus last time to keep some kind of inflationary rate increase, keep it moving in the right direction. Whether it's 2% or 3%, 2.5%. You know, we defer your wise judgment on that. So we came up with a few scenarios. Kat actually crunched through this yesterday, and the other good work, Kat. And the other element was the growth. So we also threw some changes in growth in there, as Clement said. What if it, instead of being 20 new connections, which was thought of being as kind of a conservative estimate going forward, if we did a 2.5% rate increase, what if growth was only at 15 new connections? If it was a 3% rate increase, what if it was only 10 new connections? And what we see is that the difference between 2%, you know, each 1% of rate increase generates about, $19,000 a year of new revenues based on your current revenues. So, you know, 19, 20,000 a year. So each unit of growth, well, that's a connection fee of roughly, we'll call it $15,000 per year. So, you know, the growth, under our scenario, we were taking away 5 units of growth. That was more of a revenue loss than adding another, 0.5% increase. But they just kind of give you a range. There's no exact science. You know, once you're within the ballpark, I think you've got the policy flexibility to kind of aim where you want to go with those alternatives. The other thing was the fire service charges at the last rate increase. They had not been adjusted commensurate with the water rate increases. So what we had in the draft Prop 218 notice was catching the fire service charges up for the missed rate increase last time. So they'll be back on par with the same rate increases that the water have been over time, and then keeping it exactly parallel with the water increases with the subsequent year, whether it's 2% or 3% increase. So the first year would be a bigger bump up for the private fire service protection charges, just because they missed out on the last rate increase.
Can I just ask, why do we care? I mean, why just go on from henceforth?
Well, why do we care about what?
Well, I mean, we missed the fire charges last time. Why don't we just pick it up from now on and go forward? How much money are we talking about?
It's not a lot of money. Yeah, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah, and the actual numbers are really hundreds of dollars, not even thousands of dollars. Quite frankly, I think we have around 120 customers that have such a service
And
at this time.
are most of those in the rural area?
They're all over the place.
Over.
Yeah.
But we're not picking up hardly any revenue here, and just why put an irritant out on something like this?
Well, they need to carry their fair share. I mean, that's part of the whole proposition.
No, I mean, I'm in
But that's with it going forward.
Yeah.
That's what.
Well, we can talk later on. I'm in agreement with a fair share, but I think given the noise factor that we might have versus the income, I think we're talking, it was our error for not charging them. So anyway, just a suggestion that we focus on our main intent, which is the annual rate increase, and not have the noise
Oh, yeah,
factor.
no, right.
That's all I'm saying. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a totally valid,
Yeah.
it's such a minor part of the revenue stream. We assumed, they missed out last time, they benefited from that, so we just showed, hey,
Yeah,
let's
no, I
get back in line. But
what you're doing.
you're right, it's your entire decision. The other thing, we put in this draft notice, a 2-year rate increase. Whether you want to do 2%, 2.5%, 3%, but you could consider doing longer. You could consider trying to do 3, 4, or 5 years. You could do 2 years and then have these are just options. some sort of, inflationary escalator after that, in case things do turn out as planned and you're still doing pretty good in a couple of years and you want to keep rates moving in the right direction, you don't want to have to go through the Prop 218 process again. That would give you flexibility to keep it rolling forward without needing to do a Prop 218 if you wanted to put it in there. Anytime you do an automatic inflationary increase, you have to put the formula for how it would be applied in your Prop 218 notice. Could be the change in the CPI from a certain month to a certain month that would be applied. And then when you do want to apply an automatic inflationary increase, you do have to send out notice to all the ratepayers anyway. It could be with a regular billing, just informing them that, hey, as of July 1, the inflation went up 1.93%. The rates are going up 1.93%. But you do have to send a notice to inform people. So that's the only, you don't have to go through the Prop 218 process, though, with majority protest and things like that. So that's an option for you, too. That's, not a lot to, I don't want to go through too much detail here because it's all based on projections, 2%, 3%. It's all pretty similar from my perspective.
Going out 2 years.
Yep.
Okay, if it's 2% means we cannot go above 2% as a rate increase.
Yeah, 2% each year. That's
Each
right,
year.
yeah.
Okay.
No. I don't think that is true. What we're doing is we're establishing a limit, and that limit is going to be a dollar number, right?
Correct.
So if we go out for 2 years, 2% each year, the board could theoretically in the first year raise rates by 4%, and in the second year not raise the rates at all.
That's not what we could set
Well,
it up
it's not what you've modeled,
Yeah.
but in terms of what the board has the latitude to do, the Prop 218 limit it just sets a limit on the top end. It doesn't say anything about when.
Correct.
Well, it gets done both ways. More commonly, agencies adopt a series of rates, let's say for 2 to 3 years.
We're just describing the latitude. It's not what we're anticipating.
Yeah.
What we're anticipating is what you've modeled.
Yes.
And whether it's 20, 15, or 10 new water connections, that really does not affect anything at all. I mean, if you're going for a 3% rate increase and all of a sudden you get 20 new water connections, there's no harm done, right?
Correct.
Right, unless we budget, assuming the rosiest scenario and it doesn't pan out, and then we wind up having to cut things that we were anticipating.
Right.
Right. But if the more conservative approach we take on the expected number of new connections, the more, call it upside, but also we may be leaving opportunity on the table if we could have had the revenue, if we knew the revenue was coming. For example, say we schedule out some capital improvements, and if we knew we would have twice the money to work with, we could have done something bigger and better and gotten more bang for the buck. So we want to dial it in as well as we can. That's why I think we asked for the range.
So you're saying that the difference in income between the 2% and 3% is $19,000 a year?
Correct. That'd be an additional roughly 19,000
That's the
revenues
difference in
per
revenue
year.
is for the...
But then it keeps compounding.
No, I understand, there's 19 per year compounded, whatever that means, but I'm just giving a figure on it. And the connections for, which really is, I think Bill's right, I mean, it's really not part of the rate study per se, it's part of our assumptions, I think, if I'm reading this correctly. So you're assuming that if we do a 2%, we should assume that we're going to get 20 water connections. That's kind of our assumption.
Well, the 20 water connections was an estimate that we presented as a conservative estimate, and I think we heard the board, we heard some doubts, and to offset, we essentially said, we're going to see how that pans
So,
out.
but these are numbers that actually, if you drill down in this document, that's where your assumptions are based.
Yes, those are assumptions.
That's all I'm saying.
Connections are assumptions.
Okay.
Yes.
And that where you get like, let's say, table 12 that I'm looking at, you're going out 5 years, but we are only talking about 2 years here.
Yeah, in the notice, we only included 2. You're exactly right. We were looking at long-term, and it's always good to look long-term and, aim in the right direction.
But at the 2% for the average water user, they're looking at approximately a nickel a month, right?
Well, there was a table there that showed what would happen with a typical bill. It was on page 28 of the packet. A little more than that. I mean, your typical bi-monthly bill is about $145 now. This is a typical user that uses about 11 units in a bi-monthly period, about 5.5 units per month. So
When you say typical, I just want to make sure I understand. Are you talking about a median user, or how are you characterizing typical?
I will call this average residential use, I think is what it worked out to be.
So
Is it a
the reason I ask is
Yeah, the
that
median's a little bit lower,
Median's about
but
10.
yeah, you do have medians, yeah.
About 10.
So I guess the average is 11, the median's 10, is what you're saying.
yeah, okay. So I just want to make sure I understand, because some of the top end is actually quite large and would skew the mean.
They do, yeah. And also on the low end, you go through, times of the year where there's a lot of low use. I think the new number I'm starting to use for some agencies is who's the median customer for their annual use. See what the middle customer is, the annual use, and then what's their average monthly use. We didn't do that here, but they're so close. Median of 10, average of 11. Typical home, and you've got some vacation homes too, so that kind of skews things towards the low end a little bit. So we were using 11
Okay.
as kind of a
Good.
reasonable representation.
Now I understand what I'm.
So Bill, what graph did you get a nickel from?
If you look at, I believe it's a 2%.
Well, what page is that?
Okay, I'm looking at 2.5.
It works out to be about $3 bi-monthly with a 2% increase, or about $1.50 per month.
And then at the top end at 3%?
Yeah, that would make the bill go from $145 to $149, so that's up about a little over $4, so a little over $2, $2 and change per month.
Okay, so the spread
about
against the
50
two different increases would be about $2.50 a month.
And that's the first year, and then the second year it keeps adding on top.
Wait, so it goes to 145 to 149 the first year. It goes to 154 the second year.
Yeah.
3%. So that's more than a nickel, Bill. I'm not sure.
No, but on the
It's about
2%, it's actually goes from 223 to 227. So my math says that's 4 cents. That table of 10.
You take a look at 28, because that shows the whole, it's like a chart showing the whole bill when you add in all the water usage and everything else.
On a 3%.
It shows the
Oh, I
2%,
see.
2.5%, and 3%.
So on the bi-monthly, at the low end, let's take 2016.
Yep.
So at the low end, at 2%, you're looking at 151. The high end at 3%, you're looking at 154. So it's a $3.01 difference. So it's $1.50 a month for
The difference between the two.
for an average customer.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Bill, you're looking at the difference between a 2% and 3%.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
with the 2% over 2 years, the combined impact by the end of the second year being implemented, customers would be paying about $3 more per month. And with the 3%, it's about $4.50 more per month. With
Yeah.
both rate increases,
So it's 10 cents more a day.
Yeah. At 3%.
assuming they don't change their use.
Well, that depends on which hour.
Yeah.
Waking hours?
How much per gallon?
Yeah. So we're really basically, our decision tonight is the percentage of the rate increase. Essentially, that's our discussion now.
So I think from a policy standpoint, what does 3% give us in terms of latitude to do good things for the district that 2% doesn't?
Well, you said it's how much more? 20,000 roughly?
Yeah, if we call it 20,000, we'll round up. A 2% increase would get you about $40,000 per year the first year extra, and call it roughly $80,000 per year the second year, so for both years. With 3%, it would be $60 the first year and $120 the second year. So the 3% gets you about $40,000 per year more as a baseline going forward.
But if you go 3%, you have the flexibility to go up to 3%. It doesn't mean you have to.
Correct. You could implement something lower if that was the desire.
Right. It just gives us a ceiling that we can go to.
Yes, I think.
Well,
yeah.
remember, but part of what we're trying to do here is feed into the budget. So,
Yeah,
we need to give Clemens guidance on what we can anticipate for revenue.
So here's my thought. We've got a very dynamic employee market. And I don't think anyone, I think that you guys particularly over the history have done a really good job with due diligence. I don't think there's a credibility issue of the group. And I think the 3%, I would also recommend we go farther than 2 years. I think 2 years is, I don't think we should have to put ourselves through this process every 2 years. I'd recommend that we do the 3% and we do it over 4 years. And I don't think anyone in the community is going to bark at us for the length, and it provides the flexibility in what we, I think the unanticipated challenges we have going forward are more than that we can essentially, I mean, the future in this area is very dynamic. So anyway, my recommendation is 3% over 4 years, and we do the proposition letter to carry us for 4 years.
3%.
I mean, they're both arbitrary, but that
So
would be
3% each year for 4 years.
4 years.
Right.
not 2.
I would tend to agree. I was just looking at the design review permits for new houses in Montara, Moss Beach for last year. Not all of these necessarily have been built or will be built, but there were 6 houses, maybe I didn't get quite to the end, so maybe 8 houses reviewed over 2014. So
Now, things have picked up, right? I mean, this year we have how many applications on file?
I think the number was 7, I believe.
That sounds right, yes.
We don't have the applications, but some of those applications we already have, but through referrals from the county, we know what's essentially
right,
coming
but some
down.
of those are last year's too.
No. The referrals will always have a 2015 in the plan
Oh, okay.
number. So the 7.
So I'm thinking that 20 is probably an optimistic number. And so I tend to go with Dwight. One of the things that came up and we may have need for more staff for the depending on what happens in Sacramento. One of the bills that our wonderful legislators are thinking about is it was an interesting bill. As written, this bill requires all local agencies to conduct an inventory of all data gathered by that agency that includes what the data is, who collects it, and the frequency with which it is collected, and to make it available. So we may be having
So data,
need
so
for
that's
more-
that's data about the data.
I mean, it's like, hello.
Metadata.
That's really loosely structured. You can flood them with SCADA data, but they're not entitled to it.
I've got to look up at the bill.
Yeah.
But it appears, and these were just the few bills that LAFCO had reported on because they affected LAFCO. What's going on for the requirements on special districts, our staff is already very busy. I don't think that the state tends to consider how busy staff at small districts is. And if we need to comply with these kinds of things, we need to be able to have the resources to do it. But beyond that,
It's LAFCO's goal to combine the districts, so there's a little less work to be done, presumably.
well, no, they just, that's a whole nother discussion. But thank you for trying to sidetrack me. No, it just seems to me, as I've said before, that, no, I don't want to take additional labor, people to work on the infrastructure and the district hardware, but also I'm very concerned about making sure that we have enough help and enough resources to get done in the paperwork and for Judy and Joanne what needs to be done. And it might be that we need to hire, in looking at the budget, looking at the demands, we need to hire a part-time person for administrative office,
For the data.
the data.
Is it possible that this notice of public hearing, that we have this in a sort of a table form? It says proposed water rates, and it goes proposed rates effective on or after July 1st, 2015, and it just shows 2%. Is there a way to either asterisk that or to put something above that that says that we will not exceed that amount?
You bet. Yeah.
So I would agree with Catherine. I think 20, we're getting on, it's March, and I think the applications for construction are usually fairly front-loaded in the year. If we, just in thinking, I mean, the decision tonight is not how many applications we anticipate. The decision is about the rate. I'm comfortable with 3, frankly, more because it's closer to what the Bay Area cost of living index tracks. Even through the downturn, we were still at better than 2% on that. So I think just to maintain, I think given how we run things, we're going to be able to make use of this, but just to keep even and not fall further behind. 3, I'm very comfortable with that. And if we find that we've got more applications and that gives us more to work with, I want to remember that we are doing test drilling, and there may be cost of acquisition that we need to have funds for. So it's not going to be a bad thing to have more applications that could help us provide more water for the new hookups. So I'm very comfortable with the notion of 3, and I'm glad you ran the numbers, because I think it gives us a good view, really down at the brass tacks of what does it mean to the average homeowner. I think we can explain the difference between a $3 difference.
Also, you're talking about estimated new connections. Don't forget there's this. We have a drought going on, and things may change in the district in the near future with wells having problems, and there may be a whole different scenario, which doesn't affect our rate discussion. But things may be different next year. Talking about well failure and connections. I hope not, but it could happen.
But Kat, I'm really impressed with all the data you put together in this. This is just so complete, and even my little nitpicky questions about how many people do we really have using zero HCF? Wait, there are people who use zero HCF. These are the vacation homes, and so it just shows the impact on the various per HCF uses. And it also shows for people, if you can just reduce your usage by 100 cubic feet, how much money you can save.
All right.
I think the only other question is how many years?
I think you put something out there.
I like it longer,
I do too.
personally.
I do too. It's a lot of work, especially for staff, to go through and do 218 notices. I think what we've got is very reasonable. So it puts us in a pretty good place.
If we have an extraordinary event, we can always
Do it again.
Revisit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the proposal that we've got right now is 3% each year for 4 years. So the Prop 218 notice would take that into account. It'd be redrafted with the 3% numbers. Yes.
So, with the pleasure of the chair, I would make the motion that's been articulated for the 3%, not to exceed 3% over 4 years.
Yep, I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any public comment? Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we want a roll call vote on this?
It's going to be unanimous.
It's unanimous.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
So if we needed a roll call vote, you know who voted yes.
There's all the names.
I'm sure she's got an answer.
Okay, we have no new business reports, sewer authority Midco side meetings.
Yeah, we had a meeting, we had a budget meeting last Monday, and we,
Okay, so.
Can I, one second?
Sure. No, okay,
Interrupt,
before we
I
move on,
apologize.
absolutely.
Yeah. A couple of things I just want to clarify. One is the notion of that we're just going to keep private fire service moving at the same 3% as the water rates without the catch-up.
Okay.
I mean, I heard that suggestion and...
Yep.
You're right, okay.
No mustard either.
And the asterisk.
And the asterisk, I think. And can I want to bring up one third thing?
You
In
bet.
the past, the way you've done your Prop 218s is you've adopted one maximum charge, and you've kind of,
Worked
phased
our way,
in towards
right.
it. What's more common, it doesn't mean you have to do this, it depends on the comfort level of your attorney, because different attorneys are comfortable with different things. What's more common, what we see is agencies have like, okay, this is the not to exceed for this year, and then next July, another 3%, we won't exceed the dollar amount that we're showing there. So you can never, go 12% year
Right.
one, but you can always keep it at or below the levels shown for each subsequent year, and that's the way we kind of put it in here.
Well, that
which
certainly
is more
sounds like our
common.
intent. Are we willing to present
So
it
this
that way?
was your pro forma 218 notice, as opposed to what we've done in the past.
Yeah, well, in the past,
Because you've
I think
got
you did that
dollar
max-
amounts.
We did, yeah. This is more common to show, specific dollar amounts that are being approved as the maximum for each year.
Right, right.
Doesn't mean you have to do
But,
It-
but
it sounds- It
this,
sounds like you have the sense of the board that that's fine.
but this 218, this draft of this 218 notice in the board packet is incorrect because it was calculated at 2%, so the
Just a
numbers do
sample,
not
yeah.
apply yet.
Yeah, this draft, the other thing too, the old Prop 218 notice had a lot of like more legalistic stuff in it. This is kind of a PR piece for you also. We're going to ask if you have other messaging things. And we try to put some positive stuff in here too, that's, to let your ratepayers know things that have been happening.
Or we
If
could
there's
have
other
put
stuff
pictures
on-
of our big shiny new hole in the ground.
Oh, I bet
We
there's
have
more
a
stuff
giant hole in the
there.
ground
Yeah.
where we're building the new tank.
Yes.
Is there a floor in it now?
They're actually working on it, so there's more of a profile. It's still dirt, but it takes form. You can see
rebar.
where the machine goes around.
But if you're
I still need
watching
to
the
see
meeting, you
pictures.
can
Are they on
look
the
at the
website
hole
yet?
in the ground on a previous,
No.
If there
All
are
right.
messaging things you want, because
Okay.
you have an opportunity to send stuff out to your entire rate base. If
Sounds
there's something
good.
else you want to put in here, let us know and
Good.
Okay.
can be
All right.
done.
Well, thank you, Alex. And thank you,
Thank
Kat.
you.
Yeah, pretty good.
All right. Moving on to sewer. Jim.
Okay, so we had a budget meeting last Monday, and we're having a board meeting this coming Monday. So on the budget meeting, Rob Hopkins did a super job on the budget, and it's the best budget it's truly the best budget we've ever seen, but best budget presentation we've ever seen. So we're going to look at that budget one more time and then send it out to the agencies for approval. In the meantime, the board is considering plans to replace Rob, the general manager, when he leaves at the end of this coming month. So that's all I think I have to say. There's not much more to add to that.
Just to be clear, for people who aren't familiar, Rob, with great regret and with the regret of the board, has to step down to attend to some family things. And he's got our full support, and we're very sad to see him go, but he's doing a terrific job of transition planning and coming up with alternatives for us, trying to think things through, trying to make sure we and the budget and the staff and crew are all ready to make this transition as well as it can be for such short notice. But I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. We just are very pleased with the job Rob has done to date. And it's really a great thing he's doing. The budget just looks, it was just clean, simple to understand. Much of it is very much the same as last year, so, you know, it was patterned on something that he could work with and yet cover some of the needs we have for the coming year pretty adequately, and in his presentation managed to achieve consensus among the board about the projects that we need to be doing. Midcoast Community Council.
Yeah, I was contacted by a member of the council that last week the county held a study session for the community on traffic concerns and fixes, remedies for Highway 1. And you can view it, I think, at the MCC. This particular member mentioned that he would request that people make it a point to get their preference in. The consultants made it a point to force a vote on two separate items so that one would take precedence over the other. In both instances, the recommendation was to add traffic lights to Highway 1. Now, if you're like me, not a fan of traffic lights, I'm a fan of roundabouts and pedestrian islands so people can cross safely. Please go on to the Midcoast Council, get the link for this, to get your opinion into the Board of Supervisors and the planners.
Who recommended the traffic lights again?
The county consultants,
Oh, the county consultants want more traffic lights.
not the people who live here.
Okay.
And so if you have other opinions, please go online and get your information in.
And the website, it's midcoastcommunitycouncil.org. right?
It is, I believe.
So we could put our comments into the website, into the.
It is. Now, I
It'll be transferred to the county.
suggested that the Midcoast Council might, at their next possible meeting, take its own opinion of what it should be, because the reason the council was formed was to give residents here a voice to the Board of Supervisors. It was because people were darn tired of having consultants force their vision on the rest of the community. So the council is a publicly elected body and does represent the folks who are here. So the other thing you might want to do is get a hold of your favorite council member, or Dave Olson, the chair, and ask for them to have a meeting and come to an opinion. My personal experience in Truckee and in Kings Beach, they took a 4-lane wide area in the commercial part of Kings Beach, turned it into 2 1-lane traffic lanes with 2 traffic circles, and the traffic moves much more smoothly at a much more reasonable pace. Pedestrians can get back and forth between the businesses. So in our case, it would be you could get back and forth between the businesses and the beach, or your friends on one side or your friends on the other side. And the ones in Kings Beach are, like I say, it's only a 4-lane right-of-way. They designed it so that traffic vehicles are not impeded at all by the curb, because there is no center curb on the island, so emergency vehicles can just go straight as possible through there. The other thing they're doing in Kings Beach, which is very nice, is they're putting pieces of art in the centers, which is a nice urban improvement for Kings Beach. But
We've got pretty good art here. It's just right out here.
ours is just right out here.
It's back over there with mountains and out here.
We could plant a few ceanothus and call it
All
done.
right,
But
so-
my point is, if you don't want traffic lights, please get a hold of the Midcoast Council and the county consultants at the Midcoast Council website.
Good, thank you.
CSDA,
Nothing to report.
CCWD, NCCWD committee report.
Yeah, I talked to Ken Coverdale about setting up a meeting, and he said, he apologized, he said that they've just been slammed, but they would have some time, probably in about a month, and they would love to sit down with us.
Okay. Any word from the folks to the north?
Well, I'm gonna give them a call too, just to bring them up to speed on it.
Okay. Attorney's report? Hearing none. Director's reports. Catherine, you've had your turn. Who else?
I went
Anyone?
early.
All right, general manager's report.
Nothing besides what I said at the beginning.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier for future agendas, something about tracking on what the county's doing with second units. Do we have anything else? Hearing none, hearing no objection, we're adjourned at 8:30. Thank you, everyone.
That's close to a record, Scott.
Going for the gold, but just came up with the bronze, I think, on that.
So Clemens, I'll send you the link for this.
But I medaled.
I just wanted to say hi to each other.
How can you get paid by